I really need to get these open, so I think it's time for a bonus CGC unboxing. Hey there, today I have an unboxing video, and in this video I've got a few orders of CGC slabs to open up. I never know if these are technically CGC unboxing videos. It's kind of the same if you think about it, but I guess these aren't books that I sent in, but they're still great slab comic books in these orders, and I want to show you the kind of books that I do buy from time to time that are already slabbed. I really take a lot of pride and enjoyment of finding my own books and grading books and thinking to myself that this is a 9.8 and trying to guess the grade, send it in. And, you know, I like that process. It's part of the fun of the hobby. But there comes a point where it's just sort of the numbers become obvious, where you're looking at certain comic books and you look at the price of the slabbed copy and you're like, well, if I look at the original price of the comic plus shipping, grading fees, shipping back to me, the anxiety of wondering if it's a 9.8 or not, and it just makes good financial sense, common sense, if you will, just to go ahead and buy the books already slabbed. And what I'm finding is this is truly the case with modern books. And again, just to clarify, for me, I always say modern, but I think for me it's new releases. So books released within the last 2-3 years, maybe since 2018, 2019, and current. Unless it's a very, very specific book, I think the days of slab everything are long gone. They're now way in the past, and I don't believe that is a good strategy going forward. Certainly, if you like a book, and in my last unboxing, I think the very first book that I unboxed was just a open order variant for a Department of Truth, just single issue. And I think the fair market value of that book in a CGC 9.8 is $21. But I decided to take the book that I purchased and send it in with a 9.8 pre-screen and spent the money to do so. That was not smart. But I did want to go through the process of looking at that particular book, and I was sure that it was a 9.8 and I wanted to send it in, and I wanted to basically take the loss. I mean, that's kind of my choice, I guess. As a collector of both comic books and CGC graded comic books, but I try not to do that very often. I really try and select books that have some either potential value or immediate value already in the comic itself, and grading it adds that much more value to it. Now, I will say that the collectability of recently released books in a CGC 9.8 is still very much popular, and I think what's happening is there is a backlog of inventory that these people that really did live by the let's send every comic book to CGC. It was, basically, if you have a stack of comics and it looks like a 9.8, then send it. It really won't matter. Just make sure you get a 9.8. And then there's all of this extra inventory. They try to move the books, and the books aren't popular anymore, or what have you. Or those collectors or flippers of these recently released books, they're just not many of those individuals left out there in the market. I'm not exactly sure. But occasionally I have a few different sources, and I like to go to those sources and see if there are slabs available for sale at what I feel is a pretty good discount. The thing is, though, you're paying fair market value for the comics slabbed, and that fair market value may still be below what it costs to get the book graded and shipped to you. To me, that's what makes it a little bit interesting, and you kind of have to make the choice as far as what books you want to purchase already slabbed, because you could find a CGC 9.8 with a fair market value of $25, and you acquire it for $25, and it's still worth $25. I mean, there's no way that it can just transform, and I'm okay with that. I just need to remind myself that I'm gonna now pay the price to store the book, hold on to it. How much of an investment do I really consider a book like that? I mean, it's great if you're going to buy a $100 CGC 9.8 for $25. That's a different story. So there's the temptation of seeing a book that you might say to yourself, well, it costs more to slab the book, so I'll buy it. But you're still acquiring it at that price, and it has that value of $25. And then you have to just kind of remember that you may not be adding any value to your collection, even though you're saving yourself some money if you were to send it in for grading. So let's take a look at the slabs that I picked up from 3 different sources. I got a couple from eBay, a few from HipComic. I got a couple from eBay, a few from HipComic, and one from my comic shop. So I'm going to go ahead and unbox all 3 of these. We'll take a look at the slabs and then compare what I paid for the slabs against fair market value to see if I truly got a good deal, or am I just paying fair market value where it cost more to get these comic books graded. All right, here we go. About to open these 3 boxes and get the slabs out. So here we go. Okay, I've got all 3 sort of opened. I wanted to point out this first one. This was from Infinity Comics. I think this was the most bubble wrap I've ever seen in one order. And if you haven't checked out Sinfully Good Comics, he's a really entertaining comic book unboxer YouTube channel, and he was just mentioning how it's really difficult for him to kind of dispose of packing material, which I'm the same way. So if he's watching this video, he's probably freaking out because this is a giant roll of bubble wrap, essentially. So let me get through this. I'm hoping there's slabs somewhere in here. Man, I was going to be eaten alive by that bubble wrap. Okay, so I got through it. Yeah, just, I mean, I appreciate the packing on that. I mean, there was no way that there was going to be any damage to these books. So that's very nice of them. Just a little excessive, but also kind of fun. Okay, so these are the slabs that I got. This was from Infinity Auctions. The first one is Philadelphia #1, and this is the cover A from 2019. And what originally drew me to this series was their fantastic variant covers. They had a lot of really great horror-based variants since 2019 that have come into the series that I picked up, but kind of joined the series late and just had an opportunity with Infinity Comics to pick up issue #1. And with HipComic, it just seems like there are just fewer people to fight with over books. So I thought that this was a pretty good deal. They didn't have too many 9.8s available, so it was kind of nice too because there were only so many that you really had to choose from. So I grabbed this one, and I also picked up another series that I liked. This is The Many Deaths of Layla Starr, #1 from Boom Studios, written by Ram V. This is cover A, which again I thought I got a pretty good deal on it, but this is very common and typical of kind of these modern books that unless there's a lot of really, really strong option news, this is kind of the state of the modern or newly released CGC slab, and a 9.8 is they're just not carrying the value. This is also The Many Deaths of Layla Starr #1. This is the 1 in 25, and I didn't pay much more for this than I did cover A. So this is, again, you got a couple of problems going on. You've got the new release market for slab books really, really crashing hard. And then, like I've talked about before, once these books are in the case, more often than not, the retailer incentive, that multiplier, just kind of disappears. It just goes away. It's not to say that this book should be worth 25 times cover A, but it doesn't even hold any sort of ratio extension of the price. It just doesn't seem to really hold up. Meaning, if cover A is $5 and in a 9.8 it's worth 25, well, it's a 5x if you get it slabbed. And then if this is a $25 book, it's a 5x of the raw, then shouldn't it be 5x on top of the $25? It's not. And you'll see what I paid for this. Really not much more than what I paid for cover A. So I also like to be on the lookout for these. So those 3 were from HipComic. And then I also purchased 2 slabs off of eBay. And I've purchased from this seller in the past. This is from seller called the Comic Monster. And I should just clarify too that the other 3 slabs were from HipComic, but they were from Infinity Auction. And I think I had said in my last unboxing that I would not bid on anything from Infinity Auctions anymore. Or while that sounds like a lie, I think what I meant was that I wouldn't pick up any raw books from them just because of the really poor condition. But they had slabs, so I thought I'd give that a try. All right, so from the seller, the Comic Monster on eBay, I got 2 slabs. The first one is 8 Billion Genies #1, and this is the Jenny Frison cover B. Love picking up any books by Frison, certainly slabs, even better. And there was so much hype and everything around 8 Billion Genies, and here was their cover B on eBay. Again, new releases. This came out May 2022, so something this year. And with all the hype and all the late printings and variant covers and store exclusives and everything, this is the cover B. I thought that this cover by Frison was great and didn't have to worry about grabbing it raw, seeing if I could send it in for grading. Is it in a pre-screen? Is it not? Is it worth my while? Is it worth the trouble? I just kind of grabbed it already slabbed. And then the second book I got from them is Star Wars The High Republic #7. Now, again, as all of these Star Wars books go with CGC, there's no indication here on the label that it's a first appearance, but this is the first appearance of Darth Krall. And really great Keith Trennis, Phil Noto cover. You know, as I mentioned before, getting Phil Noto on High Republic books, what a treat. And there we see Trennis on the cover with her lightsaber battling somebody who's holding a red lightsaber. So a little bit of foreshadowing there as you get into the book. But I'd really like to get the entire run of Star Wars High Republic in a CGC 9.8. I've got several exclusives and variants, but I want to focus on just the cover A's to see if I can get all of those. And so far I have 1 and 7. And again, just saw it from this seller that I trust and really felt like this is the time to buy those sorts of books already slabbed instead of buying them raw and sending them in. Okay, this last book is from My Comic Shop. You can see there's their labeled cardboard box. And I wanted to point out too, when I was doing the unboxing, when I was opening the books, they used those foam bumpers around the corner, which I love. So I'm going to put those aside and save those. So I will be saving a lot of this packing material because it's just too good to throw out. So with prices coming down, there's certain characters and certain comics, certain first appearances that I think are definitely cooling off, but they have a lot of potential to either come back or maybe their character appearance hasn't been really fully realized or it hasn't really heated up to the point. It's always been kind of a hope or a dream or something. And I've thought about like kind of going through those characters and keeping kind of like a hot and cold list. Like now is the time right now while everything is very, very quiet to go back and look at this character or this book. And this character would absolutely be on that list as a character that I think should always have some sort of speculation around her, and then just sort of following and tracking the lulls and the best times to focus on these characters. And the character I'm referring to here is Dr. Aphra, and this book that I picked up from My Comic Shop is Star Wars Darth Vader #3, her first appearance, and this is the second print. And really strongly considering trying to track down the third and the fourth print so that I can have a nice run of her, the 4 printings of her first appearance in Star Wars Darth Vader #3. So each of her printings has kind of like a different color overlay or tone to the background. And it's the same exact cover. And to me, it's like the perfect first appearance. She's in story. She's full on the cover. It's like it's a no doubt, no brainer first appearance for this character, which to me adds to the appeal of it. And like I've been saying, I think that right now it's a really great time in general to be a buyer and a collector of comic books. But certainly those books that are considered to be keys, personal grails, things like that. I mean, this is a great time to be looking at books like this, where I don't typically buy books this expensive already slabbed. I would much rather have the book raw and take a chance and gamble and send the books in myself. So this is a little bit different from the other books that I've opened here, where I did invest in this one. But I do feel like I got at least a fair price, or a price that is close to what fair market value is today. But there is part of me that does believe that even books like this, I think we may see another 10, 15, or even 20% drop off of all comic books across the board. But as I've said before, I think things are relative too. So it's really about supply, availability, timing, things like that. When you have the finances and the means to go ahead and acquire books, I think it's kind of built into whatever your personal formula is. But certainly, I think, as we all know, part of the draw of buying books already slabbed is it's a guarantee. You have it professionally graded, certified. But I may, with the third and the fourth print, look for raws and see if I can go that route as well. But I just wanted to take advantage of the prices being a little bit lower right now. And what I want to do, speaking of prices, is show you what I paid for these books and compare them to the fair market value. And also look at the final bids on the other books were auction. This was a buy it now purchase off of my comic shop. So I want to compare the final bids and show you what those bids were and compare that to what the books are selling for to see if I got a good deal. All right, so here are those 3 orders that I placed for the slabs. The first one is from Infinity Comics on HipComic, and I'm going to go over here to column Z and look at that total cost. Now, the total cost is the final bid amount plus tax and shipping. So for this order, I paid $125.11, and I had to pay $15 to ship the 3 books, which I think is very reasonable. It was probably $15 worth of bubble wrap, to be honest, and then $9.55 tax. So with Infinity Auctions, there is a 9.5% tax. At least it was for me. It could be a California thing, but something you want to look out for. So while the actual here is my final bid amount, which I think is very fair when you're comparing it to fair market value of those graded books, I'm going to go ahead and look at column Z, the total cost, which puts the shipping and the tax into the calculation to determine the actual door-to-door total cost. So the first book, Philadelphia, #1 in a CGC 9.8, is valued at $77, and I paid $51.17. So a nice little discount there, even after tax and shipping. And same with the next 2 books, The Many Deaths of Layla Starr, $32.77 to acquire that book, and it has a value of $46.67 in a 9.8. The next book, though, I think is very interesting, and this kind of what I was talking about, where the retailer incentive, the ratio multiplier, it just gets washed away when the book is slabbed. And it gets washed away with your run-of-the-mill comic book. It's not necessarily true across the board. If there's a very, very significant key first issue, first appearance, then that ratio will command a higher dollar amount. If you think back to Dr. Aphra #1, the 1 in 25, that is an example of that. You're not going to find the 1 in 25 for the same price as cover A, but that's a key book in the Star Wars universe. No offense to Ram V or Boom Studios, but The Many Deaths of Layla Starr, #1, as it stands right now, is not a key book in sort of the comic book collecting market. And that's the kind of book that I'm talking about, where that was a 1 in 25, and it has the almost identical CGC value of about 83 cents more, up to $47.50 above the cover A. I did pay a little bit more to acquire it just because I feel like it should be worth more. I mean, you just sort of look at the bar that cover A is set, and I would think that maybe you're doubling for the 1 in 25. I mean, if you look at the cover price fair market value for a raw, and you got $6.50, so the 1 in 25 is 3 times that, but still under ratio. But just kind of using those values to kind of help determine what should the graded value be. You would think it would, if the raw is 3 times, you would think that at least the graded book would be 2 times, and it's just not. It's the same value. But I was happy to still get it at $41.17 door to door. And I feel like those 3 books, while not super popular right here in the moment, I think those are really great independent stories to invest in. And it's the first issue of each story. Many Deaths of Layla Starr, I believe, was a miniseries. Philadelphia is an ongoing. Great books, great reads, and also a great opportunity to grab those books already slabbed. Moving on to the eBay purchase from the Comic Monster. Very similar situation, except it looks like I did overpay a little bit for the High Republic 7. I paid $47.76 for that book, and according to my value sources, that book at a 9.8 is only worth $41. And 8 Billion Genies #1, I paid $51.88, and it's only $60. So for as rare and as hot as that story was, maybe for some reason people wanted only cover A and not the other exclusives or variant covers, and for some reason they didn't like the prison. It's usually hard to believe when you've got a very popular artist on a variant cover for a very popular book that that would be the one that's ignored. But it just is what it is. It just is not holding as much value as cover A is. But I like it. I thought it was great. The raw value, $16. So it has a lot of potential here, and I was happy to get it under fair market value. Now, the last book is not a book that just came out. It is a key book. It is Star Wars Darth Vader, #3, that second print. And what got me here is all of the additional costs, fees associated with it. So here we have a CGC value of $164.50, and I actually paid $165. But then I got hit with, which was kind of weird. It was a little backwards. Shipping was $7.40 for that book, and the tax, I included the tax, and then there was a 3% buyer's premium added onto it, where you see that on checkout. So you do know what you're paying, and I did know that I was paying that extra money to my comic shop. It's always weird to me that like there's a buyer's premium. Like, shouldn't there be a seller's premium or a seller's tax or something? But okay, so I got hit with that. So an additional $28.50 to get that book in my hands. And I remember when I first saw it there and it was for sale at $165, I looked at the fair market value and it was about $165, and it was selling for a lot more on eBay. I was trying to put in some offers and trying to negotiate a couple of deals, and it was somewhere around $200. And I was like, you know what? I can just buy it straight up from my comic shop at $165. I don't have to deal with the constant back and forth or trying to be convinced that the book is worth more than it is. My comic shop just had it there for sale, and I was like, you know what, easy. But then as I went through the process, it wasn't so easy, as I was hit with those additional charges. So for a total cost to acquire that book, I was looking at $193.50, more than fair market value for that book in a 9.8. And it's always tough. Like, are you really factoring in tax and shipping and other things into your total cost? Or are you just looking at, hey, I paid fair market value $165. Like, did I or didn't I? And that's always kind of the thing in my mind. But I like to track the full acquisition cost, because I think it's fair, it's honest, and I want to keep track of all, any sort of money spent to invest in those books. So those were the 6 slabs that I picked up of, I think, books that to me I was collecting anyway. I was buying Philadelphia, but I had started later in the run, so I was happy to go back and get #1. Layla Starr, I was buying that whole series and the retailer incentives. I mean, I think I pre-ordered #1, that 1 in 25. I have it raw, and I got it from Things from Another World and I probably paid around $20 or $21, probably more after their bag and board service and all of their fees. So I probably ended up paying at ratio for that. And those are the kind of things that I think about. It's like, okay, if I was spending $20 to $25 to acquire the book raw, and then I could pick it up at auction for around $40, that sounded like a good deal. But the fair market value of the book Slabbed, it just didn't line up. 8 Billion Genies I had whiffed on, just completely missed, wasn't buying it. So now I'm going back and picking up some books when I can find deals, and I really think that Frizzen cover is gorgeous. I have one cover A raw somewhere in here, but just kind of going back from an investment perspective and grabbing some specific variants, late printings, and slabbed copies wherever I can. The High Republic, it's always something that, as much as I want to stick to the plan and stick to spreadsheets and really kind of set my boundaries with my numbers, anything Star Wars, I'm going to be a sucker for, so I'm going to end up paying a little bit more for that. But I think that would be kind of a fun little project. I think that, with that book only being worth $41, that might have been something I could have waited on and found at auction later on and gotten it for even less. And I'm curious, because that is supposedly a key within the High Republic series. If some of the other ones that are just part of the story that don't really have any sort of key character or key value significance, I should be able to get those pretty cheap, somewhere in the $20 to $40 range. So it might be an opportunity to get those now. Like I mentioned with the Afra, not to recap the whole thing again, but I think that there is just an opportunity for us to look for right now where there are characters and stories that it's not that they have fallen off of our radar. They're still there. They're still recognizable. Afra is still a very popular character. Her books are still very valuable, but they're just not like hyped and thrown in our face every single day like some of the other books are. So while everybody's chasing M&M Spider-Man store exclusives or whatever the latest Spider-Verse character is, or the Spider-Verse villain, or the Sony Spider-Man villain person from Spectacular Spider-Man from the 70s or 80s, whatever that is, that people are just like, they look at the squirrel and they chase it. The way that I look at it is just, it's fewer eyes on the books and the characters that I'm looking at. So I'd highly recommend, like, just make yourself a list. Like, if something pops right now and you're like, okay, that sounds like a cool character, it could be somebody from the Spider-Verse, just make note of it. Return to it 6 months later, 12 months, 18 months later, a couple years down the road. I mean, you can tell when characters and stories are kind of being talked about and then when they're not. And when you've got a great character like Afra, just as an example, everything is cyclical. So we're about to roll into the new year. We're going to get Mandalorian season 3. Will she appear in that season? Will she have her own standalone? There really has been nothing discussed about that character. She's still a great character in the comics themselves. She has her ongoing series. So like I said, not off the radar, but just not being hyped. And I love nothing more than avoiding the hype, avoiding the FOMO. And I feel like this is even though I think I paid right at fair market value, I think that when Afra was really top of mind for Star Wars comic book collectors, her first appearance and all of those additional printings really were taking off. And so I'm really happy with the price I paid for that one. Let me know what you think. Are you taking advantage of some of the lower prices that we're seeing? Do you have a strategy to pick out characters and stories and grails and other personal keys that you're on the lookout for? I'd love to hear a little bit about your strategy of how we can take advantage of some of these lower prices in the market. Thanks for watching. Happy collecting, and see you next time.